What's up, everybody? It's your boy, the tallest former commish in the game, Z Money, Mr. 0-3. You know what season it is? Well, it's the NBA playoff season, but it's also content season because I ain't a commish no more, and so I ain't got to deal with Alex annoying my ass 5 hours a day. And I can spend those 5 hours doing productive things like coming up with very important fake basketball league rankings. So, let's get to it. I decided what the hell am I going to do on a Saturday while I watch the Jazz collapse, even though they won the game, while I watch the Timberwolves lose. These early games suck. I'm going to make some RBSL player rankings. We used to do this shit way back in the day. I always loved them. And like the last time we did a top 50, I think none of these players were in it. Like Svatos was number one. Svatos is getting put out the pasture into D League right now. So things have changed a lot. There's things worth talking about. So, the players are all interested. I'm interested. You're interested. Let me tell you why your player sucks and why my players are better. Let's get to it. So, I'm going to do the top 25 players, but we'll start off with some honorable mentions of some people who didn't make the cut. All these guys are rock solid, There's a lot of players in the league, and not everybody can be in the top 25. So, of these guys, we kind of got a variety of different types of players. A lot of these guys are kind of a little bit of everything. Warren Massey is probably the best. Like, this is not a ranked list. I really like Warren Massey. I think he might honestly deserve to be on the list over some of these lower guys. But I went back and forth. I decided to not put him on. These other guys are all good in certain facets. Francis Porter, great defensive guy. Charlie Cover, great scorer. Just not quite as good as some of the guys you'll see on the list. Metzger, great all around. Stevens, a rock solid center. These dudes are all good. Before we get to the top 26, just to talk about how I'm ranking these guys, this is really about like how they're doing this season combined with how good I think they are in like the immediate time frame. This is not like future looking. I don't care how good they're going to be in 5 years. Maybe a little bit about like next year, but really kind of like in this exact moment. And I don't give a shit about contract. This is really just how I think they are as a pure player. So without further ado, let's get to the real rankings for these players. Let's upset some people. So first we got 26. So I ended up with doing 26, not 25, because I came up with 25, and then I realized I didn't even recognize the existence of someone later on this list, and so it ended up being 26. I didn't want to cut number 25. So we'll start with Horacio Soda Jesse with the big acquisition. It was last season in free agency, I want to say. And Horacio has really turned into a great all-around center. As you can see from the ratings and the stats, I mean, the man's scoring 20 points per game on 63% efficiency. I don't know how real that efficiency is, but he does everything solidly. He gets some boards, he plays some defense, he can score well. The only knock against him is that he's not elite in any of those categories. His offense, you could argue, is elite at 63%. With the 20 points per game. I'm not completely sold on it just based on his, entire stats as a whole. But if he can keep it up, I think he will raise in these rankings. He's a great, I don't know. There's probably going to be 5 centers above him, but he's kind of in that borderline, he's probably an all-star, but not quite all-NBA level center. Can't go wrong with him. 25, Eric Aguirre. Aguirre is, or is it Aguirre? Doesn't matter. He's one of the best non-scoring role players. I think there's 2 types of role players. There's dudes you stick anywhere and they're just always good. We got some of those guys. Aguirre takes a little more of a team to be built around him. You obviously need to have scoring options around him. You need to have some rebounding. He doesn't give you everything, but he's the best passer in the game, pretty unquestionably, and one of the better defensive guards. There's different ways you can think about height and athleticism. Look, the man's an A+ perimeter D, A steals guy. He's very good. The obvious knock against him is the offense is pretty heinously bad. He's shooting he's shooting 40% true shooting flat this season on 8.2 points per game. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of points, but when you're at 40% true shooting, it takes you more shots to get there. So he's actually fucking atrocious offensively. He's so good of a passer and so good on defense, especially on defense. I still think he's an elite player. Teams he's been on have all been good. The Nuggets are rock solid this season. The Nets were obviously great with him. Miami was good with him. So, you can have opinions on how good passing is, but Aguirre is money. Just not, I don't want to go too far. The dude's 25. 25th overall. Like, there's a lot of players who are better than him, but I would consider him like an all-star level player. Next, and probably one of the more controversial picks, of course everybody's going to be like, well, Zach, it's your own player. Of course you overrated him. Well, fuck you. I make this list. Is Caleb Westmoreland. Caleb is a lot like Aguirre, although he's worse in some areas, and he's more of a well-rounded player. In fact, he's much more well-rounded. But obviously, the big knock against him is the 5'10". Look, Westmoreland for a point guard, we talked about it many times. The combination of passing, defense, and rebounding and scoring is pretty crazy. Like, his scoring is not great. We can see his efficiency numbers. You know, he's a little better this season at 52%. That's still a net negative, although it's a pretty minor negative. It's pretty rare that 52% is like, sure, your star players are going to score way better than that, but the chance that you're starting 5 guys on your current team that shoot better than all score better than 52% is, it's not super high. So I still think he's a solid offensive option. He's clearly the second best passer in the game. From a steals perspective, he's the second best guard defender in the game. He doesn't foul. He's an A minus perimeter guy plus the 5'10". It's hard to say. And I think rebounding is super important. Rebounding gets overlooked. I think it's more important than passing. It's, offense and defense run the league, but getting 8 rebounds from your point guard is super important. And to the haters out there who say he can't be good, he's 5'10", well, on the Sonics team, he has a better plus minus than Damon Vogler. Obviously, Vogler's better than Westmoreland. No one's contending that. I'm just saying, statistics like him a lot. And so that's why he finds himself at number 24 on this list. Is one of the more enticing role players, in my opinion. I love short guys in the league. 23. I feel like all of Marco's guys get slept on. Jalen Green being one such player. Jalen Green has turned into a beast this season. I'm not sure I fully buy into the Jalen Green hype just because he's only been doing it for a season right now. He kind of had this crazy jump from last season to this season. His true shooting went up by 60 points, or is it 6 points? Whatever, it doesn't matter. It went up a bunch from 57 to 63. He's scoring 25 points a game, and he really has no weaknesses. He's a pretty bad rebounder for a guard, but at guard, you can build around that, and he's like a crappy AA defender, but it's AA. And scoring-wise, I mean, he's an athleticism-reliant scorer, but 25 points per game on 63% is elite. It's like there's only a couple guys on this list who are going to have better stats than them, and they're all going to be, for the most part, significantly higher. The big question with Jalen Green is like, is this kind of a flash of the pan, or is it sustainable? Obviously, he's got the A-minus 3-point shot, and he's shooting 43% from 3 almost. Those numbers don't add up to me. That's kind of where I think the big question mark is this just like, is this new version of Jalen Green just in the middle of a hot streak, and he's going to cool off and it's going to go back down to closer to 60% true shooting? If that's the case, he's still very good, but that's why I'm not putting Jalen Green higher, because actually this raw stat line you're seeing in the averages is actually amazing. 2.2 steals, 1.8 fouls, 25 points per game. It's arguably like closer to 15 on this list. But he needs to prove it a little more. He's kind of fresh on the scene. But you look at the ratings, there's a lot to like here. If only he wasn't an F in offensive rebounding. That's really the one knock, but even that's a small knock. So Jalen Green, win some games in Toronto, man. Come on, please, save Marco. Number 22, Mr. Big Color Bait. We're getting the purples out early. Jesus, I'm going to do Jake a solid on this one. I've been told it's Jesus Deets, but I still think it's Diets, man. But whatever. Jesus Deets. Jesus is, without question, one of the better rebounding defensive centers in the league. But he's not quite elite. I think, there's a couple things about Jesus that give me pause. So from a rebounding perspective, he's arguably the second best in the game. There's one player above him who's also a great center that we'll get to. But the rebounding rate percentages, they're within a percentage point of each other. They're both extremely good rebounders. Jesus is an elite rebounder, no question. Defensively, he's second or third in the league in blocks. He does have A-minus posty. Now, whether blocks versus posty is more important, you can have your own opinion. In my opinion, I think posty is more important. Like, the difference between an A-plus block guy at 3.7 versus an A block guy or an A-minus block guy at 2, That's 1.7 possessions in the game, and a block doesn't even necessarily guarantee that your team gets possessions. So blocks are fun. Blocks are not bad, but I also think that blocks are generally worse than just making guys miss shots. So I don't over-index on that too much. So that's why I think while Dietz is not the best defensive center in the game, he's easily top 5. But the big problem with Dietz is that he's a ball hog who cannot score. Similar to Caleb Westmoreland, who we were just talking about, Dietz is more efficient, but he also he's slightly more efficient. He shoots the ball more, which you can think of as good or bad. 54% true shooting is kind of right in the middle of like, is it good for your team? Is it bad for your team? The Warriors as a whole, this is their leading player, and they're they're a little over 500. I think their plus minus is 2. So you can see when you let Dietz steer the ship, you could fill out a better team around him. It's only going to go so well. He's handicapped because he can't shoot free throws. Although you would love to see the field goal percentage get above 50. I think like elite centers can get a lot closer to 55 with the field goal percentage. That could help Dietz a lot. So he's offensively limited. That's the biggest reason he's not higher on this list. He's a little foul-y, not super foul-y. 3.3 is kind of what we'll see for most centers. But I think he's actively harming. At worst, he can be actively harming your offense. Well, as we get deeper into this list, we're going to find a lot of guys who can do it all. They've got no downsides to him at all. Also, he's just color bait. He's purple, and he's only 22. I think that makes him the lowest purple guy, or the lowest purple guy of any type. I'm trying to think, except for like pure prospects like Maris, who's just not even. I mean, he's purple pop, but like he's yellow. So what are you gonna do? So Dietz, Jake, there's your boy. He made the list at least, so don't cry too much. Next up, the Magic, not quite superstar, but elite player, Ricky Baldwin. Ricky Baldwin is a do-it-all type of guy who in Orlando has been relegated to something of like a role player role. He's more than a role player, but like you can see, he's scoring 12.5 points per game. He scored 13 in his first season in Orlando, 16 in the championship season last season. He's not really doing the big scoring. Like in Houston, we can see he was a primetime scorer, 20 points per game. That's pretty good. But he also plays elite defense. He doesn't foul. He's a great passer. So, like, he does everything except rebound. And for a 6'3" athletic point guard, like, rebounding really, great if you have it, absolutely not required. So, like, I think Ricky Baldwin, although statistically he probably doesn't deserve to be 21, he's better than his stats. And, Ken has a lot of other great elite scoring options. So Ricky Baldwin scoring at 59% is actually, the ball's better off in Charlie Covert or Ivan Miller's hands. Those guys are going north of 60% in the true shooting. But Ricky Baldwin is really just a rock solid, all-around point guard who can do you no wrong, which is why he's above kind of like Aguirre and Westmoreland, who, while they might be better in the passing area specifically or in rebounding or in defense, Baldwin is got the offense to go with it, which they don't. Love me some Baldwin. Great player for Ken. Next up, we've got the first kind of multi-tool utility do-it-all guy, Dabino. So Dabino, I mean, you just forget the offensive stat lines. Just go right past passing and go straight to offensive rebounding, and then just go across the list, and it's like, god damn. Dabino is, you can play him at, you can even play him at point guard, to be completely honest. He can probably do anything except center. He could even probably get away with playing center and do quite well. He gets boards, he plays defense, and what's crazy is while he's not a volume guy offensively, he scores reasonably efficiently. You look at these scoring numbers, like his worst season was a 56% true shooting, which 55 I usually think of as about dead average offense. So he's slightly above that, but he doesn't even demand the ball. Now that could be considered good or bad, because if he's going to be like he was in Houston, where he can be close to 60%, you might want him to shoot more, but I'm sure you can live with this. And he's just, guys like this who can, I don't know if I would call him a lockdown guy, being that he's B+ and B in the man defense categories, but still, at 6'10" and athletic, like you put him on a guard, you gotta like the idea that he can have a good impact on him because he's so damn tall with that B+ quickness. Overall, I love Dabino. He's the type of guy that makes championship teams. That's why I've got him at 20. Going in the complete opposite direction with the next pick, Uh, Roland Humbert, pretty new on the scene in his third season. His scoring numbers are ludicrous. He's scoring almost 30 points per game. It's 65% true shooting, which is basically elite. There are a couple guys who are better than him. He might be like the fifth best scorer in the league, which is, first of all, it shows how insane the offense in the league is these days. A guy like this, when I joined the league in 2090, this would have been, I mean, this is better than what Guo was doing almost, from just a pure numbers perspective, just scoring. The problem with Humbert, obviously, is that he's terrible at everything that's not scoring. So I even felt bad putting him this high. The scoring numbers are truly great, so I gave it to him. But I have two main concerns for Humbert. One, I don't know if the three-pointer is going to stick. He's another A- three-pointer guy, and he's over 40%. I want to think it'll stay, but I'm a little concerned that I think his true, assuming he's more or less maxed out, which according to the ratings, it seems like he is, and he's 26. He is going to not stay at that 65% level. He's going to drop down a little bit. It's going to be more like a 63, 64, which is still great. The man can't play defense. I don't care what Evan says. C- is not good defense. He can't rebound and he can't pass. At least he can handle the ball a little bit to mitigate his turnovers. So Roland is really going to be the best pure scorer. There are other guys like Bobby Triple Scoops and Bobby is the other kind of guy like this. He doesn't score with the same volume as Humbert. He wasn't even close to making this list. Humbert is like the premier, give it to him to chuck it. But you got to build a team around him. He's not an all-around star. But 30 points per game, 65% true shooting, hard to go wrong. Up next, Ariel Jones. Ariel compared to some of the previous centers who we looked at, like Horacio Soda and Jesus Dietz. I just like Ariel Jones a little more as an all-around player. He has that A posty, which I don't think either of them had, or Dietz had it, excuse me. But unlike Dietz, Ariel Jones is a very good scorer as well. 20 points per game on very efficient 60. He's been north of 60% true shooting on basically every team except for the 1 year in Minnesota when they were tanking. So it's not super real. He more or less gets boards. He's not an elite boards guy, but he's not terrible at getting boards at 7 a game. That's pretty solid. And he gets 2.5 blocks. Again, I would rather get that A posty than an A plus block. What is it? It's 1.5 blocks a game maybe from a guy like Dietz. So I don't know. That's one possession a game. And that one possession might not even turn into a turnover. It might just be a block and the team gets it again. Another thing I really like about Ariel compared to a lot of centers, he's about a full foul better than most centers. I really like that. The biggest downside to Ariel is I don't think it's possible to get his usage higher than this. There are other guys where I think you can force feed them the ball and they can just score better. Ariel is maxed out. It's just because he's an athleticism reliant scorer, not a rating reliant scorer. So he's just never going to demand the ball as much unless you come up with a really crazy team build around him with a bunch of low usage guys. That's probably never going to happen. So Ariel probably, I think we're at maybe the fifth best center here. I think we got maybe 4 more big men. But Ariel Jones, rock solid. Bryant got a huge steal when he took him from whoever the Timberwolves GM name is. Is it Michael? I want to say it's Michael. Great pickup. He got him for a steal. Great player. Next up, power forward, scoring legend, Derek Hoffman. Derek Hoffman is a beast. When you look at his PER numbers, he's top 5 in the league. Breaking the 30 PER barrier is nuts. Very hard to do. It's quite an impressive accomplishment. And Derek Hoffman is not just a scorer. Yes, that's probably the thing we all know him for. He runs at the hoop. He takes a lot of free throws. But the man gets rebounds. He can get stocks. He's honestly a potential top 10 player, but he's held back by one big limitation, which is the fouls. He's only playing 29.6 minutes a game. And in those 29.6 minutes a game, he's getting 3.6 fouls. So if you were to try and extrapolate that to a full minutes schedule of 35, 38 minutes, he's over the 4 foul barrier, which is the sign that you're fouling out on a pretty consistent basis. So while this is like a top 10 talent, the fouling's always going to hold him back. So great player. It sucks that Tim has him because I don't think Tim is great at utilizing kind of like weirdly limited players like this. He's just going to kind of throw him at a wall and hope it works. But still, not the worst thing to just throw out there when you're getting 63% true shooting, 25 points. He's getting like a point a minute almost. It's pretty nuts. I really love Derek Hoffman. Great, aside from the fouling. Up next, another big man, a new up-and-coming big man. I don't think Clint has really been on anyone's radar quite yet, but Clint really popped off starting this season, although he was he was insane in the one game he played in the D League last year, but that doesn't really matter. Clint's got it all. He's not insanely athletic in the ratings, but it's 7'6". I think that makes the offense better. I think it just raises a guy's shooting percentage. I don't know if it helps on the defensive side. He's an AA rebounder. He's got the A- on the inside. He's been scoring efficiently this season. But really, what I love about Clint is like he's got the great rebounding potential. He's got good defensive potential, and 7'6", which is all great. Him versus Ariel Jones was really close. I'm a big rebounding guy. I love rebounding, so I would take the rebounding over the scoring of and maybe man D of Ariel Jones. They're both very close. But I ended up going with Cochran. I also think Cochran is like, I don't know where he is in terms of maxed out, but I think there's still maybe a little more we can get out of Cochran in the future. Ariel Jones is like 29. We obviously know there's nothing new we're getting from him. Cochran is like, we're just beginning to see the type of player he can be. So I'm very excited. Well, I'm not that excited because it's Gasper's player, and I'm sick of seeing Gasper run through the league with like all these dudes he's growing in his fucking incubation lab of elite talent. But I like Cochran a lot. He's very good. He's going to be a big man for a long time at only 23. Up next, one of my favorite multi-tool players. In fact, maybe my favorite multi-tool low-usage player in the league right now. Mac Pappas at 6'7", with A- quickness and with A perimeter D. The man really, he's a little different than Dabino. Dabino really is a 1 through 5 guy. Pappas is more like a 1 through 3. But I think he's better at 1 through 3 than Dabino is at any position. That A- perimeter D, the A steals, he's completely immune to fouling. The dude barely averages a foul, which is absolutely ludicrous. He's not an elite rebounder, but he gets rebounds. For a guard who are oftentimes higher usage, he doesn't really demand the ball. Although the lack of wanting to score combined with his solid scoring numbers, like average scoring numbers, means he's not harming you on offense. But really, what I love is that elite defense. Like he's just such a perfect shooting guard, small forward in a playoff matchup. You can put him on the team's best scorer, which is usually a 1, a 2, or a 3, unless you're one of like 3 teams that happens to have a scoring center. And you're going to see great results. So I love Pappas, and fouling is one of the biggest attributes in the game. And I think Pappas might actually be like the best foul avoidance guy in the entire league. It's hard to explain how unbelievably good 1.1 fouls a game is. That like usually I think of a good guy's like 1.5, 1.6. Pappas is even lower than that. And he's playing against like guys who have the ball a lot. So super impressive. I love Pappas. There's a reason the Jazz are so good, and he is a big reason for that. Up next, we got the Grizz, Jalen Suggs. Just a rock solid guard, up and coming. Jalen Suggs, from a scoring perspective, is very good. We don't know where the ceiling is quite yet. He might have some inside rating to still gain, or in fact, he probably does. He's going to get a little better at passing as well. But the man's scoring 25 points per game on almost 60% true shooting while being an AA defender. And he can also kind of pass, and he can also kind of get rebounds. That's a lot of well-rounded, good stuff. We've obviously seen Suggs in the past pop off in the playoffs for Mantis, so he can do it against good competition. Usually guys who are A across-the-board athletes can, and Suggs happens to be that. Obviously, his lowest athleticism rating is strength, and strength is the one athleticism rating that you can manually curate to get bigger and bigger. So he may finish his career, in fact, he probably will, as an A+, 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 A+ athleticism guy, which is absolutely nuts, while being an AA defender who doesn't foul too much. He's like an average foul guy who can shoot the three, maybe go inside. Really, Suggs is, there's a couple ludicrous, beyond perfect point guards, shooting guards in the league that are above him. But like Suggs is just one small tier below that. He really can do it all. Zero weaknesses. He just while he has zero weaknesses, he just doesn't have the out of this world strengths that some of the players above him have. Next up, Glenn Smith. I wanted to say when I was doing these rankings that Glenn Smith came out of nowhere. He kind of did. He was actually very good in Minnesota last season, but Minnesota was tanking. But all Glenn Smith has done is played even better this season and been, to me, maybe the best power forward in the game. There's one more power forward on this list. I think you can go back and forth on who's playing the best right now. But Glenn Smith, the one gap in Glenn Smith's game is that C posty. The thing he gives you back is that he's a C perimeter D, C steals guy. So how much you think power forward is about posty versus perimeter D? I wouldn't play Glenn Smith at center, but he's an elite rebounder. He's an elite scorer, 62% with 22 points per game. He gets 3 blocks a game and 1.3 steals. That's 4.3 stocks. So Glenn Smith really does it all. He's definitely on the older side, but like I said, I'm really considering just right here, right now. And he's got the strength and he's got the jump and he's got the quickness this season. Probably have it next season too. So he is awesome. And Cartier is obviously the main guy on the Sixers, but the Sixers, there's a reason they're winning games, and it's not just Cartier. Glenn Smith is a huge piece of that equation, and the dude's getting almost 9 boards, or he's getting over 9 boards a game, which is very good. And I think rebounding is super important. So Glenn Smith, very good. Getting a little closer to the top 10. And the other guy who I think is vying for the top power forward spot, you can go back and forth, is Bam Graham. So Bam is obviously a lot more scoring focused than Glenn. Glenn is putting up 23 points per game, 62% true shooting. That's fantastic. But Bam is a whole nother league, right? 32 points per game or 33 points per game, 64% true shooting. The scoring numbers are crazy. The problem with Bam, he doesn't get rebounds quite as well. He plays worse defense. He's worse in every other capacity outside of scoring. But, basketball is a game about putting the ball in the bucket. Bam does that. So which one would you rather take? I don't know. There's a reason I ranked them back to back. I think most people prefer offense. It's why I put Bam right ahead. But they're very close to each other. The other thing to question about Bam is he's playing 40 minutes a game, so his numbers are kind of inflated. His efficiency isn't inflated, but his usage is actually if he's playing a regular amount of minutes compared to Glenn Smith, who I'll go back to super quickly, Glenn Smith is playing 37, 36 minutes. So if Glenn Smith played those extra 4 minutes a game, 3 minutes a game, he might be closer to 25 points per game. Or Bam would be below 30 if he was playing that. So just something to consider. But who do you think is the best power forward in the game? That's up to you. We're getting closer to the top 10. Before we get there, we've got one more guy, another Jazz player. So we've got Papas. Now we've got Jason Love. Love is just an elite scorer. It's kind of like Roland Humbert on the Nuggets if you gave him the ability to rebound and play defense. So Humbert got 19, but Love can actually get steals a little bit, and he can actually kind of rebound the ball. They play very similar types of games. They're super athletic guards who are oversized that can shoot threes, and that's what Love does. Getting nearly 7 boards a game and 1.7 steals makes Love a lot better. And he's just we're right before we kind of get to these guys who are completely free of any weaknesses. Love is very close, right? Love doesn't really have any weaknesses per se. You just wish he was a better defender. He's I would call him a league average defender, not a weakness again, but there are some people who can be elite defense and elite offense put together all in one. So Love, great, and right outside the top 10. In the top 10 is the final Jazz player. Jazz have 3 top 20 guys. That's the reason they're leading the West. They have such a well-rounded team. Augustine Coelho, however you say that shit. I think there's 3 centers above him. There's 2 centers above him. There's 2 centers above him. We're getting to the elite centers now. So Coelho really does it all. He's pretty efficient. He's low usage though, so he's not an offensive guy. He gets by on offense because he's extremely athletic with the A+ strength and the A- jump. But really, Coelho is a great defender. and a great rebounder. In terms of rebound rate, he's like more like top 5. He's not quite as good as like Dietz, but he does not harm your offense in the way Dietz does, while still playing defense that I think is just as good as Dietz. So that's why he's better. And I think, center defense and rebounding is like the most pivotal position in the game. So that's why I like him a lot, and why he gets to be top 10, even though like you look at a guy like Jason Love, who was right before, and you go like, the scoring numbers, they're out of control. Yeah, but you got to control the game with possessions, and that's what Cuello does. One thing I realized when I was doing this research, like, why is Palm only playing him 30 minutes a game? Maybe he's like intentionally holding him back for the playoffs, but Cuello otherwise, like, get this man in the game. He's a plus player. He's a beast. But yeah, so he's the beginning of the top 10. Getting into the top 10, we got our next perp. Good old Cade Cunningham. Not a lot to talk about with Cade. Rock solid, all-around player, does it all. Kind of like a better version of, I don't know, who's someone else who's a well-rounded guard, like Ricky Baldwin maybe. What Cade Cunningham gives up in not being an AA defender and just being a B+, B- defender is the fact that he's 6'8", which, depending on how you view the game and how it works, is arguably better than being like 6'3" and an AA defender like Jalen Suggs. That's your decision to make. I think I would prefer Cade as a defender over Jalen Suggs. I think height makes a difference, especially when it comes to defending three-point shooting, which is arguably the most unstoppable type of offense in the league right now. He can get some boards. He's not a great boards guy, but he scores at volume, and he's doing it at 60% true shooting, which is one shade below true godliness. But again, I just think Cade is so matchup proof because of his athleticism profile, that's what brings him into the top 10 for me. It's the 6'8" with the quickness, and he can jump, and he has strength. There's just no gaps in his game, really. Like, you could argue in a couple of seasons, that didn't really affect my ranking right here, that he's going to fill out the rebounding and the inside scoring a little more, and he's really going to be like just a beast. And he actually kind of reminds me of a guy who comes up next, which is Jason Cartier, who's another one of those guards who can do a little bit of everything. The difference is Cade Cunningham has the 6'8", Cartier has the pure ratings. Cartier has like the elite rebounding. He's a BA rebounder. He's a BA defender. Cade is like a BC rebounder, a BB defender. Cartier can shoot the three. He scores above 60% true shooting. He's scoring 33.7 points per game. So, like I said, we're really getting into these players who really have no gaps in their game anymore. Cartier is definitely one of those guys. The top end of his scoring at only the low 60s. It's so funny to say that like there's the leave something to be desired, scoring only 62% true shooting, 34 points a game. But in the insane era of the league we are in right now, that's kind of the truth. So Cartier, one of the best well-rounded guards. He can play point guard. He can play shooting guard. He can't really pass the ball. Or more so, I should say, he's a turnover machine because of his insane usage. That would be the only, if I was nitpicking, weakness I would have for him. We've seen him struggle in the playoffs with matchups because, well, I don't know why. You could say it's his athleticism profile. He's not one of these insane across-the-board athleticism guys. But still, I mean, the dude puts the ball in the hoop all the goddamn time. He's a beast. There's a reason he's number 8. He deserves it. Above him is a guy who climbed a lot of ranks this season. Emilio Zili has been talked about a lot as one of the best players in the league. And I kept wondering, like, is he ever going to make it? Obviously, Noel kept being patient for a long-ass time. I think he finally made it. Zili has really elevated to the next level of greatness this season. The scoring, while he had the volume last season, now the efficiency is there at 62% efficiency. We'll see if it holds up, but I'm mostly a believer. I mean, you look at the stats, it's like A+ inside, A+ three-pointer, A jump shot. But not only that, he's a great passer. He's not quite elite, but he's a great passer at a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, getting 7 assists a game. He's an A perimeter defender. I know he doesn't get steals, but I'm okay with relying on a guy who is a great man defender, and he is a solid rebounder at his position. He's getting 6.5 boards a game. He's getting almost 7 boards a game, which is nothing to scoff at for a guard. Now, he is 6'1". I can hear the haters saying how can you put a 6'1" player at number 7 in the league? Well, I think the numbers speak for themselves. But like maybe you hate him because he's short. I think he's an A perimeter defender. Who, while he's ever so slightly on the fouly side, I don't think he's fouling out of games. So I'm weirdly, after being the number 1 Zealy hater, hopping on the Zealy train at least for this season. His window's going to be short. He's already 28. But it would be cool to see him hit the window for a couple seasons. Because we've been waiting a long-ass time for it. That's for goddamn sure. It's a shame that Noel had to wait for Bam to die so that Zealy could fly. But, them's the breaks. Getting deeper into it, we have the Nets' legendary superstar, Daddy Starry, coming in. Starry, we all know what he's got. He's a very, very good defender who never fouls and just takes the ball to the rack on every possession. And what does that equal? That equals almost 30 points per game, north of 63% true shooting, which is just so heinous. This is just not real offense. And although he doesn't have the rebounding, it's just the combo of those two. It's unbelievably efficient offense, like wildly efficient offense, combined with very, very good defense, combined with an AAA athlete at 6'8". I mean, it's insane. Like, first of all, being an AAA athlete at 6'8", like, as a baseline, forget the rest of your ratings, that's absurd. But then the dude is actually good at basketball on top of it. Not perfectly well-rounded, but if he was, he'd break the game. Like, we kind of are in an era where it's like there are no cheat codes because everybody's a cheat code. Like, if we put Starry in the league 25 years ago, we maybe, like, we're starting to be at the level where we'd be talking about these dudes. Are they cheat codes? I think it's great that, like, the environment is even now. So who's a cheat code? Well, these guys are all arguably cheat codes now, but they're not cheat codes because there are other cheat codes. So that's the kind of level we're at. And going deeper into the top 5, so this is the big surprise pick. Adam Hilton, who I had forgotten about his existence until I looked, and it turns out there's this dude on the Raptors. His name's Adam Hilton. He's 6'5". He's an AAA athlete. He's like an AAA offensive person. He's almost an AA defensive person. He's an unbelievable passer. He's got not a single rating below C, and he's insanely good. What a shock. I think Hilton is playing way below his potential value, which is already great. I mean, okay, the man is scoring 20 points per game on 62% true shooting, so the volume isn't quite there, but the efficiency is. He's a 3.5-8 assisted turnover guy at 11 assists a game, so he's basically the best non-Westmoreland DeGuire passer in the game, and those two guys are like specialist passers, while this guy's an all-around guard, and he plays defense. And at 6'5", athletic, that's nuts. I suspect this is a bit of a perspective pick. I think if he was in the hands of a GM who could utilize him to the max, his stats have one tier left in him. There's just simply no way that a guy who's B+, A-, A- from an offensive rating perspective should only be scoring 20.3 points per game. There's no reason this guy can't be at least in the high 20s. I don't know if he can break into the 30s, but I think he can keep the same efficiency and be in the high 20s scoring wise. And if he was, then it's just hard to debate that he's not the most well-rounded, one of the most well-rounded guards in the league. There are a couple guards who are going to be above him, but still, the dude's nuts. And he's blue-purple. He's got it all. So on the one hand, I don't want to see Hilton leave Toronto because he's like one of those guys who can really shift the landscape of the league if he does. But I also really want to see him leave Toronto because I want to see how good this dude is. I think he could put up he could be like a dude who's putting up 50 in playoff games if we're not careful. So again, not sure how many people are aware of Hilton, but now you know. Up next, number 4, the Sonics legend, the second best center in the game, in my opinion, Damon Vogler. Vogler is just he's got zero weaknesses. He's a perfect, well-rounded center. Vogler is putting up 25 points per game on nearly 62% true shooting. So he's got volume, he's got efficiency, he's the best rebounder in the league outside of like rebounding specialists. So like there's like Benny Dominguez on the Suns has a better rebounding rate than Damon Vogler, but Benny Dominguez on the Suns does nothing other than rebound. Damon Vogler rebounds. He also plays elite defense, and he arguably has room to grow into a BB perimeter defender, which is just like, I don't even know if it helps, but it's just ludicrous. So the man is just, again, he's a perfectly well-rounded center. He's got zero weaknesses. A lot of people obviously shit talk Vogler because he's one of my players. But as I was building these rankings, it's just like, what's the, there's not a single thing you can look at him and criticize. And some, I know the block numbers, the block and the post defense, I think have been A pluses at times. And then in terms of the scoring volume, I think the one knock against Vogler is like, oh, he only scores 25 points per game. We are talking about the number 4 player in the league, of course. So you got to have high expectations. When you look at the Sonics, there's a reason his volume isn't higher. It's because everybody on the Sonics shoots the ball. So you could argue a GM who wants to get more out of him offensively could get his scoring numbers to 30. You got to get rid of guys like a Chris Thomas or a Caleb Westmoreland, who are these chuckers who, you want the ball to be going to Vogler instead. Anyhow, second best big man in the game, I don't think is really that much of a question. He's just too well-rounded. And, gotta love Vogler. There's a reason the Sonics are a 60-win team with a 5'10 guy as the second best player. I think you either have to pick that Vogler is elite top 5 player in the league, or you have to admit Westmoreland is good. Pick which one you want to do, Doc. I'll take either. To the top 3. All right, we got Cameron Turner, Mr. 700. It's hard to state how absurd this man's offense is. I mean, you look at the ratings, and they're insane. But the man could potentially average 70% true shooting 2 seasons in a row while scoring almost 25 points a game, which is absurd. It's absolutely ludicrous. Well, I think he's probably the most efficient scorer we've ever seen in the league that scores with any volume at all. Maybe I'm missing some really old historical guy. And there's a reason. He's 6'8". He's almost a perfect athlete. He is an elite free throw shooter. Being over 90%, we almost never see. He's got it. And the rest of his game is elite too. He's a great rebounder. He's getting 8 boards a game. He's a very solid passer. He's not like a specialist passing point guard, but it's 6 assists a game and a 2.0 assist to turnover ratio. He's a quality passer, and I know we've seen Mantis play him at point guard. The one thing that holds Turner back from being the perfect player is his post defense is fine, not great, and he doesn't play perimeter defense. And the big question with Turner is well, you really want him to be a point guard, I think, or maybe a shooting guard, or maybe even a small forward. But his defensive ratings kind of dictate that he has to be a power forward. I know Mantis has ran him at point guard in the playoffs at various times. I forget how efficient it was. So the conundrum with Turner is you have this perfect player, but how do you utilize him best? I don't know the right answer to that. But what I do know is when you're arguably the greatest scorer of all time, at least from an efficiency perspective, you're going to end up at a high ranking in these rankings, and that's why he's number 3. Number 2, I think the top 2, everybody knew what they were coming in. It's just about who's going to be 1. I'm curious what people think. I have decided to go with Evan Mobley, the best big man in the game, as number 2. Mobley is a lot like Vogler in the sense that he's a perfect big man. Mobley is just Mobley has traded a little worse rebounding. He's only A- for A+ blocks and posty. His block numbers is getting 4 blocks a game, which is pretty insane. And he is a bit more of a higher efficiency scorer or higher volume scorer, even though his efficiency isn't quite as good as Vogler. But when you're talking about 8 more points a game versus 1/10 of a true shooting percent or whatever, 61 to 62, 1 true shooting percent. I don't know the right scale of number. It doesn't matter. I still think it's better to be Mobley than Vogler. So Mobley is damn near perfect. He might have room to grow. I think Vogler actually arguably has the higher ceiling. I think Mobley, in a weird way, even though he's fresher on the scene, Vogler just came to the league at 17. Vogler might eventually pan out slightly better, but the blocks and everything for Mobley, I mean, it's crazy. And he's got, the big thing is he's a better athlete than Vogler. Vogler is like a CAC athlete. He is 7'4". Mobley 7'1", B-A. That's just crazy athletic profile. A lot like Mobley in real life. Still stand by the player I created because I made Evan Mobley way back in the day. So there's obviously no question who the best player in the league is. It's Brian Arroyo. I don't think a lot of people were surprised here. The thing about Arroyo is it's the offense. Outside of Cameron Turner, he's unquestionably the best scorer in the league. You can make a pitch for Cameron Turner. It's kind of like, do you want 4 or 5% true shooting, or do you want 10 more points a game? I think you want 10 more points a game, because getting 10 more points a game at 66% true shooting is absurd. At 66%, the man represents the greatest offense of all time by himself. And the nice thing about Arroyo is you get a bunch of goodies to go along with it, like being the best rebounding guard in the league, a tolerable passer. He's not a great passer, but he can pass the ball, and he kind of gets steals a little bit, and he's not a heinous defender. So Arroyo is really just the perfect offensive player. At least he's maybe the best one we've ever seen, him or Cameron Turner. We're in this overloaded part of the league where the stats are more than eye-popping, and Arroyo is one of those guys. But 34 points a game. That one season where he did 38 points a game on 68% true shooting is probably the greatest offensive season of all time. I think this craps on any Svato season. He's getting 9 boards a season, 9 boards a game this year. It's nuts. So many boards for a 6'1" guard. He's not great defensively, but when you get to these levels of offense, that doesn't matter anymore. So that's why Arroyo, number 1. Here's the full list. I think I messed up Arroyo and Mobley. I changed them at the last second, but otherwise I think the rest of this is right. So let me know what you think. Did I fuck this up? And if I did, how hard did I fuck it up? I'd love to hear your opinions. Content season is back. I know the video everybody wanted was the GM rankings. Well, if you wait long enough, they're going to come. Don't worry. I think I'm going to do the play-by-plays for the playoffs. Then I will get to the GM rankings in the off-season. Don't worry, boys. The content is coming. We're coming back. Thank you for listening. Have a great time, and toodles.